Chapter 5. The Silence. Your natural way of being is to live in mental silence, observe, worship, and manifest. Believing greatness is your destiny will train the subconscious into habits of hard work with optimistic expectations and activate spiritual power regardless of your awareness or acceptance of its existence. Recognition of spiritual power will enhance faith, and when coupled with focus, attention, labor, and purposeful intention, will generate abundance. Nonetheless, anything that the mind focuses on will gravitate to it. If you are motivated by financial gain and material possession and think proactively while working to attain it, it will come. There are limitations in your physical manifestations, just as there are limitations in nature. You wouldn't expect a single apple tree to bear enough fruit to feed the world, and you shouldn't expect a lemonade stand to produce enough profit to build a city. When you attempt to manifest anything, you must prepare for the change, growth, and development of its creation. Just as the seasons exist in the natural, with death preceding new growth, you should expect transitional challenges before realizing what you have visualized in the silence. If you focus on how much you dislike your job and consider new career opportunities, then you shouldn't be surprised if you're laid off. Most find themselves in fear of the future during times of change and miss the signs God leaves to direct the path to their creations. For example, if laid off, many will allow the parasite and fear of the unknown to create anxiety. Then will take a new position that is not consistent with their prayer rather than exercising faith while waiting for direction from the universe. Depending on the quality of your thought system, identifying as the self may sabotage blessings and manifestations frequently because you are inherently afraid of change or losing mental attachments. Even though you may want more things, many fear the uncertainty that comes with acquiring them. To get what you've never had, you may have to do what you've never done or go where you've never been. God's ultimate goal is the atonement of humanity. We all play a role through the unification of the collective subconscious or soul. However, an abundant life experience for all is God's will for us. Nonetheless, God uses challenging or painful periods in life to assist in your spiritual growth and evolution of the subconscious. That builds mental fortitude to prepare you, your children, and future spiritual beings for combat with the parasite and individuals who are knowingly or unknowingly driven by it. When you are not secure in living with uncertainty, you fear losing identity attachments, including material things, social status, titles, relationships, popularity, etc., as well as what you think you need and want. The severe feeling of loss that corresponds with things is due to the belief in the insignificant, isolated self and did not exist before the separation. When you were completely connected to God and didn't believe in the illusion of death, you did not fear loss because you understood the universe's cyclical nature and that you had an eternity of experiences to undergo. Relationships and material things were able to be enjoyed without possession or ownership. You recognized abundance throughout your life experience and knew without a doubt that everything was energy or God. So you were able to live in expectation for greater days or live graciously during difficult times. Abundance is evident throughout the universe. Rarely do you see anything created without a sufficient amount of it available, whether it be planets, stars, or life on Earth. There is still more of it than you could ever imagine. Everything in the physical universe exists within the same universal mind or matrix, and it's your birthright to manifest abundance easily with thought. It's a matrix because everything is identical with a microscope strong enough to see atoms. But since you live in separation, your brain perceives and inspires division. The principle of abundance is true in your life, and there are no limitations, within reason, on what you can attract and how much of it. Unfortunately, an individualistic, limited thought system restricts your ability to live the ultimate synchronized reality. Abundance mirrors infinity and should not be constrained to finite things or thought constructs. Therefore, to have an abundant and infinite life experience, you should focus on the manifestation of that which is endless, such as love, power, peace, health, and happiness, instead of a sole focus on manifesting finite things and living within the confines of a materialistic thought system. The social parasitic hierarchy is under the control of the beast and was made purposely in obsolescence and scarcity. Therefore, the spiritual being cannot concern itself with limitations the parasite has built into the system over time or the finite number of material things available. The parasite works to keep you captured with the desire of external objects so that you will not wake up to the prison within and seek its demise. Keeping the mind focused on anything external keeps you from psychoanalyzing what's happening inside you. The addiction to the worship of money normalizes materialistic attachment and contributes to the division of spiritual beings by creating classism. Social classes are the building blocks of the false parasitic hierarchy. Suppose you engage in a thought system that believes wealth or material things determine an individual's worth or value. In that case, you are subconsciously subscribing to a parasitic interpretation of all beings, including yourself, and denouncing your spiritual nature. Furthermore, when participating in a parasitic social hierarchy, it's easier for the parasite to manipulate you emotionally through relationships, friendship, acceptance, or admiration of your peers. In other words, it will keep you obsessing over impressing the parasite in others. Suppose you are overly fascinated with acquiring material things just to show them off rather than use them. In that case, you may not necessarily preoccupy the mind with thoughts of climbing the social ladder, but may be allowing the enemy to build a prideful thought system, which is brittle and effortlessly exploited. If you fixate on other individuals' ideas about you, you are easily susceptible to the disruption of your emotions, feelings, and creative process. Furthermore, you can manifest an addiction to acquiring things without knowing you are creating dependency until it's too late. As long as you embrace the mindset of the self, you will desire worship, attention, or praise to some degree. Since the fear of death makes you believe you need to be remembered, while intrinsically contemplating immortality and divinity. In atonement, there is no reason to seek worship or attention from others because you see yourself within them. Most importantly, you must never allow yourself to elevate anything or anyone above you mentally because that may lead to idolatry, the most dangerous form of mental attachment. At one point during my spiritual journey, I found myself in a deep mental and emotional attachment to money. As I stated, since I left my last job, I had lived reasonably well with little to no effort. One day, while on an appointment, the universe introduced me to a gentleman that owned a cable sales company, and he kept bragging about how much money he was making. After leaving that meeting, I saw the same two letters, AK, on license plates repeatedly for over 6 months. I saw the letters so much, I eventually told my wife about them because it was so prevalent. I felt it was an undeniable sign from God. Although my wife has been a part of my life since the beginning of my spiritual awakening, I learned long ago that the enemy would never allow an individual to fully believe in supernatural experiences without firsthand knowledge. So I rarely would share my endless spiritual encounters. However, this particular sign was the most frequent example of universal synchronization I'd encountered. So finding out what God was communicating was extremely important. Eventually, I saw the same letters on a cable truck and knew that I had to pursue the cable sales business. Within months, I found myself leading an organization with multiple high-grossing salespeople, while my wife and I were just processing payroll. I suppose the addiction to the worship of money already exists within the subconscious. However, that was the first time I had enough of it to believe I would be rich forever. I thought of money as something to seek for most of my life, but I honestly thought money would never be an issue again during this time. I started spending it faster than ever before. I didn't question whether it was necessary to buy something I desired if it was within reason. Now I recognize that the money was either changing my thought system or displaying a subconscious attachment that I wasn't aware of fully. Most individuals can only form an addiction to the worship of money because they've never earned enough to view it as a tool instead of a necessity. To be addicted to money, you have to have enough of it to use it at your discretion. Forming an addiction to money worship is less complicated, meaning you just need to idolize it. If you believe money can bring things you can only find in atonement, like happiness, peace, and love, then you worship it. I state that most have an addiction to the worship of money because many perpetuate its worship as virtuous, even though all can see the societal decay of poverty and income inequality and know that capitalism without social accountability is not sustainable. You can form an addiction to almost anything, but worship is a more profound emotional attachment to something that can make you identify as worth more or worth less without it. If and when money becomes disposable, you can stop idolizing it to the point of worship and form an actual addiction to it. To clarify, it's not how much money I had, but the rate I was earning it that convinced me that I was on track to becoming a multimillionaire. As it was happening, I didn't realize how the money affected my thought system. But what was more noticeable was how differently others treated me. Most earthly beings tend to put money on a pedestal. So when they think you have a lot of it, they elevate or despise you. Associates, family, and bank tellers treated me entirely differently than before. Money is powerful because of what you can acquire and how easily people are motivated by it. Buying things can make you feel good, but knowing you can buy people makes you feel powerful. I knew I felt a new kind of power when the parasite would have me think things like, I can change the lives of most of the people around me easily. It was an exciting time in this life experience because I thought it was the start of a new chapter in my journey. Until that point, I had decided that I wouldn't tell the world about my extraordinary spiritual experiences before I became a multimillionaire. I promised myself I wouldn't get an Instagram account until I had $1 million liquid. I felt like no one would believe I was enlightened or communicating with God if I wasn't wealthy. Although I hadn't experienced much stress, anxiety, headaches, mental illustrations, or perpetual thinking for years and knew it was invaluable. I thought I had to be a millionaire to prove one could live off thought alone and convince individuals they all needed to stop thinking as fast as possible to hear God. When the cable sales business was flourishing, I was sure I was on my way to $1 million within a year and felt like God was finally exalting me so that I could inform the world of my truth. When the business started to decline abruptly, I realized that I had grown addicted to power and money, or was never fully cured of the parasitic social economic brainwashing I endured as a child. We are all God, so we desire purposeful worship to an extent, and I had never felt so victorious. Accepting friends and family's praise was a curse because the parasite turned envy into mockery within my mind. When my circumstances changed, I felt like a failure because I allowed the business to make me feel successful. I didn't fully understand how mentally attached I was to others thinking I was great until I no longer thought they felt that way. I realize now that I transitioned from a thought system identifying as a spiritual being to a worldly king during that period. I moved into what seemed like a castle and experienced earthly power like that of a king, like never before. Allowing earthly possessions and people to make me feel good about myself led to a fragile thought system anchored in pride that would eventually make me feel worse than I ever had. Pride is the most dangerous thought system due to its fragility. Self-idolatry, or a prideful thought system, is inevitably harmful because one begins to see itself as superior to everyone and everything. God is everyone and everything. If your grandeur is a result of natural law and you lose respect for it, you may experience its karmic vengeance. When the money train stopped, the prideful identity was the first passenger to exit. Even though I still had many of the things or mental attachments, for a while, I felt as if I had lost everything because I could not accept identifying as an average being. I would blame God, others, and anything for my disposition and anger because I resented how small and insignificant I felt, no longer identifying as successful or king-like. I once heard that pride comes before the fall, and I would add the more prideful, the greater the impact of the collision. Money addiction and worship are closely correlated to the sense of pride or self-idolatry that one enjoys with it. However, money and pride can lead to your devastation if you become attached to them. The Bible says it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. That's because heaven is atonement with God, which takes dissolving the false idea of the self and elimination of the parasite. If you are attached to or identify with anything in time and space, atonement is impossible. Therefore, it's difficult for a man living in excess to let go of earthly things to be born again of the Spirit. Also, When you can acquire lots of things and others are in awe of you, it may convince you of your greatness, and you may begin to worship yourself, which is a form of idolatry. If this happens, you are a pawn of the parasite because pride creates insurmountable insecurity and frailty. Real power is spiritual power because it is eternal and infinite. External power is finite and weak because nature or circumstance can eliminate it at any time. Also, I have expressed that we all desire praise and worship to some degree because at the lowest common denominator, we are all divine. Many worship and idolize money, placing it before God, universal law, and spiritual power, because subconsciously they desire the praise they anticipate its acquisition will bring them. The more they acquire, the more prideful they become, and the more recognition the self believes it is due. Money is your God when your net worth determines self-worth, and when those with less have less worth. Money worship will make a spiritual being feel worthless. If money represents security, peace of mind, freedom, happiness, and the way to a good life, then it is your God. In reality, it cannot provide any of these. Only divine design can. The only thing money can do is buy things and be a primary weapon of the parasite. The parasitic creation of money serves as a tool to possess and control the spiritual being, earthly resources, and the world. A principle of monetary supply is the expansion and contraction of money to manipulate economies and societies. Modern money has no real or intrinsic value besides your collective subconscious hypnosis that you will trade time, resources, energy, and assets for it. You must recognize the significance of the illusion of time and the subconscious value placed on it to understand the addiction to money worship fully. When you identify as a spiritual being, in the silence, you will see that you are identical to all other spirits and recognize that death is just another false idea due to separation. God made you in her image, so your spirit is eternal. Every spirit is like a star, and you will exist within God for eternity. When you separated from God and started to believe that you are a human, you began to fear the day the body dies. That, along with other misguided beliefs, set the stage for a collective thought system forged in fear and generationally passed down. That is another reason the Bible says you were born into sin. The subconscious fear of death is a genetic hindrance for the collective soul of the earthly being. The idea of death or limited time is one of the primary weapons the parasite uses against you. For most, the acquisition of money represents the ability to have the freedom to do with time as they see fit. Some are working to retire well. Others are pursuing financial autonomy now. But ultimately, the ability to live free of time constraints is the end goal. The working class trades time for money. The investment class pays individuals for time. The parasite uses the fear of losing time to justify the endless pursuit of money, sometimes without moral accountability, because it becomes a false representation of freedom and happiness before death. Contrary to popular belief, time is not money. However, since many have bought into this ideology, it justifies the collective addiction to money worship. As long as the parasite continues to trick you into believing money represents time and that time is limited, money idolatry and worship can be deemed virtuous. Just as money is a misrepresentation of time, things are misrepresentations of happiness and freedom. The things you accumulate and collect often don't make you happy, but offer temporary gratification or pain relief. For some, the adrenaline rush and dopamine release come while they're buying things rather than possessing them. Shopping can be a more significant stress reliever than having if you identify with having new things rather than attaching to the old things you have acquired. Also, if you are more captivated by the thrill of the ability to spend money instead of spending it, your worship may have grown into a more dependent phase, akin to the hoarding of it. Repeatedly, you find that those with access to large sums of money are not as interested in displaying wealth with things, but satisfy the addiction to money by gathering more of it. Nowadays, social media has created an alternative reality where you can feel famous by appearing to have more access than others. The feeling of fame and notoriety, once reserved for the rich, is available to all people. The emotional high of grandiosity is addictive, even if the lifestyles are completely fictitious. Social media has added another layer to the collective identity crisis because many create false identities through deception and elusive images in virtual reality. The perceived status that comes with the false identity can be just as compelling as real wealth. The parasite can create unlimited internal backstories and mind movies about what the entire internet world thinks of you. Earlier, I stated that many have a collective addiction to money worship rather than money itself. Just as it is impossible to be addicted to a drug you've never tried, many of the people that are most obsessed with money have never had enough to spend it freely. When you have access to large sums of money, you realize that the parasite will find a suitable replacement to facilitate unhappiness, pain, and suffering. However, until you can spend money freely, the enemy can misrepresent it as the key to a peaceful existence. Therefore, a false virtual reality of wealth with an abundance of things can be satisfying, regardless of the truth. The collective addiction starts at an early age when parents convince children that income is the key to personal sustainability, making money the figurative savior in a divided species bent on becoming the fittest to survive. It's an addiction because no matter how much money you accumulate, the collective thought system is that you can never have enough. Only in the silence, through constant training and identification with the higher mind, will you be able to live above money and create it freely, without worship or addiction. The practice of daily meditation is necessary for the pursuit of atonement and abundance. Abundance should not be confused or reduced to acquiring money or material things because it represents something much more significant. An abundant lifestyle includes lots of excellent health, love, blissful moments, mental peace, great experiences, and harmony. A pride-filled rich man who identifies as the self rarely lives in abundance because it also includes the gradual elimination of greed, anxiety, stress, insecurity, or the desire to impose your will on other spiritual beings. Furthermore, The pursuit of atonement and the gift of enlightenment will give you the ability to exercise spiritual power through law, and there is no greater gift. Creating abundance in silence. The pursuit of silence daily is necessary for atonement and abundance. However, full atonement is more comprehensive than mental silence alone. To pursue an abundant lifestyle, you must train the subconscious to think proactively easily. Some practitioners believe that successful meditative practice can take many forms. While I agree that affirmations, visualization, and practicing positive thinking are essential for spiritual practice, the primary exercise must be sitting completely still in silence and darkness for an extended period, preferably in a small room like a bathroom or closet. In the silence, you will hear the truth. In the darkness, you will see the light. And in the stillness, you will find thyself. Hearing, feeling, and knowing God is a journey within as your spiritual reality becomes clearer over time. First, you realize that you don't agree with everything you think. Eventually, you know that most of the thoughts are not you to begin with. Confirm the parasite's presence and decide to stop thinking. Through spiritual warfare with the parasite, you form a new thought system. Train the brain to identify as a spiritual being and realign the conscious lower mind with the subconscious God mind. Finally, when you know that you are within God without a doubt and begin the atonement process, you recognize the Holy Spirit easier and can seek aid as you evolve. Seeking the silence in meditation is the beginning of seeking mental quiet and harmony at all times. When you are fully aware of the parasite and begin to shed the false identity of the self, you will see that silence is the only option. Remember, the parasite is fully aware of its presence and of what you truly are. Since many believe that the thoughts the enemy creates are their own, it can hide in plain sight. Once the truth is brought to light and there is nowhere to hide, it may attack you and become judgmental. Then your thought system will become more negative, in turn attracting adverse outcomes. So you must pursue its demise. Luckily, the elimination of constant thought is much easier than you could ever imagine. If you can lose weight, you can stop thinking. When you exist as the self with duality in the mind, you can concentrate on two things simultaneously, one consciously and the other subconsciously. For example, as many of you read this, the parasite is working hard to make you stop. However, it's limited in its ability to influence you while you're reading. It will do its best to stop you from opening the book at all or will wait until it can manipulate you easier to influence you. So consider listening to the earth's ohm while reading this book and watch as your ability to concentrate and silence internal dialogue gets easier. When you are actively focusing on two things at once and putting the entire mind to work, the parasite is more restricted. When the mind is idle, unfocused, or without purpose, it is a playground for the devil. Just as exercise gets more comfortable in the body as muscle builds, mental exercise will build brain muscle that will allow mental silence to become easier with every moment. Once you begin to develop mental muscle, the parasite will work tirelessly to put you back in its cage. So you must keep this practice throughout your life. It's likely that just reading this book is causing the brain havoc because it is exposed. So, beginning mental exercise and meditation soon is best, especially if you find that you are getting angry or sad before or after reading. As I said, when you focus on two things at once and preoccupy the mind, the parasite is limited. So, finding two things to focus on permanently is the first aspiration. Learning to breathe with the nose is an essential part of the process to silence the brain and should be one of the two. When you breathe with the nose, you are actively slowing the brain down and reducing stress and anxiety. Breathing with your nose will make it easier to focus on every breath and identify negative beliefs in your thought system, as well as bad ideas or habits within the subconscious. When the brain is moving slower and you are free of falsely identifying with every thought you think, you can observe the internal dialogue and psychoanalyze your thought system easier. The second thing you choose to do can be different for everyone or may change for various reasons. Over time, I have altered between concentrating on taking long, deep breaths, holding a small object like a crystal, or keeping the middle finger and thumb together all day as if I was meditating. Another option that will get easier with time and may be best after you've begun mental training for a while is the practice of becoming fully in tune with the environment or just to be. Specifically, that would be listening to sounds present but usually tuned out, like air conditioners, refrigerators, birds chirping, and cars driving. When doing things like driving, working out, or jogging, you can also practice these activities without listening to music and become fully engaged in the moment by focusing on each breath you take with the nose. The advantages of developing a silent mind are immeasurable. In addition, to lessen stress, eliminate depression, create a productive thought system, and limit the parasite, you enhance the brain's satellite capabilities to act upon universal law and manifest abundance into your life with ease. When we fully attune, we are limitless, multidimensional beings filled with the energy of electricity, light, and eternity. You can influence time and space at your discretion, with and as God. That is why desire, want, and greed are unnatural, because they result from the earthly being evolving in limitation through separation. Many people familiar with universal law attempt to create material wealth through meditation, affirmations, and visualization for a few minutes a day, but quit when they see it's not working as fast as they would like. Universal laws are fixed and constant, regardless of your knowledge or ability to activate them. In fact, doubt in and of itself activates natural law and constrains your ability to manifest reality. Moreover, every thought affects reality, not just what you think when you're meditating. So if you're meditating 15 minutes a day, but your thought system is pessimistic or unhappy, you will not have success because of what you're thinking the other 23 hours and 45 minutes. It's also true that your emotional energy or vibrations play a massive role in your ability to attract creations. When you feel bad, you have a low vibrational frequency, but you have a high vibrational force when you feel good. If you think positive thoughts, but feel negative emotions, your mind and body activate the law, but in a counterproductive fashion. The most effective way to control the beast or your body feelings, and brain thoughts is mental silence. Many people try to instantly change their thought processes, but that's impossible because the thought system is rooted in the subconscious with branches in the brain or neurological pathways. You have to rewire the brain and eliminate conditioned beliefs with brain reconstruction. More importantly, the parasite is always present when you're thinking, and it is too crafty for you to outsmart. After all, it is you or a reflection of the subconscious, the soul. The parasite is your brain, so you will not be able to battle it with thinking alone. Spiritual weaponry is silence because that is your natural way of living. Within a reasonable amount of time, depending on effort, you will begin to master mental silence and can employ one of the main tools in your belt much easier and employ proactive thought permanently. Start with a thought like, I will think and feel perfectly. With proactive thinking, you do not rely on past conditioned ideas of how to think exclusively, but are also calling on God and the Holy Spirit to assist you in creating a new productive thought system. As it becomes easier to keep a silent mind and live in the higher mental state, you have to be cognizant of God's will, your spiritual purpose, and the intersection of what you are attempting to manifest. With time, you will begin to form a relationship with God on an intimate level and see that God's will may not always coincide with the self's will. With time, you will also find that God's will is beyond your narrow understanding and is best for you, evolution, and all existence. For instance, I've known that my purpose was to be a vessel for God's word for the past decade. But even when I was agnostic, I still thought often that earthly beings needed to save themselves. When I began to discover the truth, I meditated on becoming a spiritual leader. Over time, the parasite convinced the lower mind that I needed wealth or success first. When I accumulated lots of money, I found myself more self-centered and insecure than I had been in a very long time. Had I become a millionaire, I doubt I would have found the time to write this book. Your purpose was predetermined, but your destiny is yours to manifest through free will. If what you want to attract conflicts with your purpose, you can find yourself in a flood of disappointment without knowing why. At times, God may protect you from yourself if a decision or attraction will rot the subconscious. For instance, God may deny the manifestation of the car of your dreams if it will ruin your thought system by destroying your marriage. The intersection of your attractions can also play a role in the causality of what you manifest. For example, if you are an alcoholic and concentrate on attracting true love, good health, and a new career, you may have to stop drinking first. It's plausible that your addiction could impede your soulmate from seeing your value, cause you to lose a new job, or hurt your liver. Another example is the common desire to acquire more things or possessions while focusing on attracting wealth. For instance, wanting a new car or new house could prolong wealth accumulation since external possessions will often induce identification with the items and be a distraction. If you allow a new car or house to give the parasite an opening and create new bad habits, you may have difficulty working towards the wealth you desire. For example, what if the enjoyment of a new car will cause you to ignore the business venture that gave you the money to buy it? When you attract anything, it's better to be emotionally detached from it so that it will not influence your thought system. The ability to attract things easily is due to knowledge of truth and that you are powerful enough to affect the universe. So you can continue to create new experiences. You should never elevate anything above the law, you or God. When you worship money or identify with things representing it, you limit your ability to bring it into your life because you have put it on a pedestal above the creator it resides in. That is idolatry. Regardless of your experiences, you must take responsibility for what comes into your life and realize that you or the parasite is the primary cause. Manifestation through law. The universe has been in harmony since its inception. Your creation, along with everything else, can be broken down to a common denominator or mathematical equation because it evolved within universal law. Most scientists believe that if the universe wouldn't have cooled at the precise temperature it did, then it wouldn't exist at all. Moreover, advances in theoretical physics have hypothesized that one godlike particle, the Higgs boson, determines every atom's molecular property in the universe. Many scientists no longer doubt the connectivity of all things because they speculate that there are electrons millions of light years apart that move in synchronicity. For these reasons and others, believing that the universe was configured through evolution or trial and error alone and not by a supreme intelligence is implausible. Since everything adds up, we know that God solved the equation before the Big Bang, and that divine calculation or law regulates universal evolution. Just as the universe's growth and development are subject to universal law, your evolution is too. Theoretical evidence that evolution is subservient to law is that younger galaxies are not more efficient nor dispositioned differently than older ones. The same universal rules apply to them all, regardless of time and space. The evolution of your life is subject to universal law solely due to the separation from God. When we fully atone or live as eternal spiritual beings, we have more control over supernatural power and the universe. We can more easily manipulate the amount of energy acting upon universal law and mold the matrix with divine will. You should think of an atoned spiritual being like a black hole, operating within and outside of time and space. For now, whether you are in the higher mind or existing as the self, the growth and development of your life experience are subject to law. You don't need to become experts in the law as long as you know how to apply it. For instance, you don't need to know how to calculate the velocity you would fall off a building because you understand enough about gravity's law not to jump. You do not need to be an expert in universal law so long as you know its effects and its causal relationship with your thought system. If you would like to attract anything, it is through universal law and the thought system that thy will be done. It's just as important to know without a doubt what is thinking as it is to control thought. For example, it doesn't matter how mighty a circus elephant is if its subconscious believes it can't break free of a rope tied to a stake in the ground. If you are not fully aware of the higher mental reality or your spiritual nature, you will not activate the power within fully. If you believe you are a human being, then you are limited by what you think an evolved animal is capable of. If you know you are a spiritual being in the image of God, like the story of Adam, then you can expect to be limitless. If you know that you can affect the world, you can. If you don't believe it's possible, then it isn't. But you are exercising the law either way. Universal law governs the process of manifestation and attraction. The process of influencing the beast to attract infinite outcomes like joy, faith, and peace has a shorter turnaround time than external creations that you do not have the current means to acquire. In addition to your thought system, the manifestation of external outcomes is determined by intention, purpose, resources, and labor. You will reap what you sow, and you can look at it like thoughts are seeds, the universe is land, and manifestation is the harvest. If you don't prepare and work the land, you shouldn't expect it to bear much fruit. Labor can be internal, external, or both, especially if you attempt to bring forth something that is not currently in existence, such as a business, invention, or lifestyle. Since the law is permanent, it's in your best interest to recognize it at all times. If you want to manifest anything, it's always necessary to call on the all-knowing to guide and direct you. The earlier you seek guidance in the manifestation process, the better, because God can align your desire with purpose. For instance, instead of the self or parasite pondering what business to start, you should think proactively and act upon the law with thoughts like, I will think of the perfect business idea easily. Remember to attract the resources to attain particular external objects. You may have to change your thought system, habits, or actions. You are using the law to bring forth inspiration and intuition from the Holy Spirit with proactive thought, but you follow the instructions through your will. Everything is within the mind of God, and your Holy Spirit exists in atonement, so universal knowledge is always present within. It's your choice to open the floodgates of eternal wisdom into this life experience to manifest your goals. If you use the law to direct your path at the outset of your creative process with proactive thinking to combine your external goals with purpose, then you will find it easier to work through barriers, uncertainty, and problems. Many times, you quit something prematurely during the creative process because you weren't passionate about it or couldn't find purpose in the task. Money should never be the ultimate end because you will always find something else you can do to make money. Also, if you can make more money or make it faster with some other endeavor, you may disrupt the creative process and move on to something new. Inevitably, the parasite will attempt to convince you that failure is proof that a new thought system or proactive thinking does not work. In addition to proactive thought, visualization and imagination are critical in the manifestation of that which is not currently visible. The parasite uses the mind against you regularly with mental illustrations I refer to as mind movies. When you are in this dream state, seeing movies in the mind starring your favorite characters, the objective is to keep you occupied and out of the moment. I call this reactive sight because the parasite is the writer, director, and producer of the movie scenes. When you practice meditation and adopt a silent mind, you are setting the foundation for proactive sight. Proactive sight or visualization is to intentionally see in the spiritual realm what you want to look at in the external world. Visualization is a two-way process. Just as you can consciously create visions, God uses your imagination and dreams to guide and direct you when necessary. When you are in the higher mental state, it will be easy to decipher dreams created by the parasite versus spiritual visions from God. One thing to be conscious of is whether you remember dreams easily. They're vivid and you can recall minor details. Then it's likely they were spiritual visions and you should use them to direct your path. Sometimes spiritual visions are challenging to understand, much like parasitic dreams, because God is sensitive to creating fear when entering the mind. Although you are accustomed to being mentally controlled by the parasite while living as the self, most cannot recognize it because it uses the word I. So the idea of a foreign entity inside your mind can still be traumatic to the untrained spiritual being. When you silence the parasite, God's presence will become as evident and prevalent as breathing because you exist within her. Proactive thought can be employed when seeking direction on what to visualize if you are unsure of what you are looking to manifest, or if you strive to be a vessel for God's will. Just think, I will visualize perfectly and be still. When God directs your desired manifestations through proactive thought and sight, you use your intention and will to create what is undeniably best for you and the entire planet. Allowing God to lead the manifestation process through proactive spiritual practice will put you in tune with God's will and purpose for your life. The parasitic social hierarchy often determines the things the self would like to manifest through mediums, competition with other individuals, or past experiences that have influenced the subconscious but are not ideal for your evolution. More importantly, you don't know what the future has in store, so your ideas will always be blind to what is to come. Through a silent mind and proactive spiritual practice, you allow God to precisely call into existence what is perfect, regardless of the unknown, if you do not get bogged down in the details. It is better to train the thought system to think, the perfect experience will come to me, rather than concentrating on what, when, where, and how. For instance, if you are looking to buy a new home, affirm the perfect house will gravitate to me, rather than concentrating on price, location, size, or features. More importantly, If you don't have the finances or can't see how you could ever buy a home, don't concern yourself with how it will happen. Just focus on aligning your will and faith with universal law and watch the world mold itself to your thought system. The sword. The spoken word is your figurative sword and a powerful tool on your journey back to the spiritual realm and in manifestation. When you affirm anything aloud, you call it into existence and command that the universe will bend to your will. The power of your word is dependent on your thought system. It depends on what you believe yourself to be, faith, and the ability to keep the parasite from contradicting you with fearful thoughts or contradictory speech. Like thoughts, sound has a vibrational force too. Since you cannot think and speak simultaneously, the subconscious is open to your direction when talking. When you are speaking, your thought energy combines with your words' power. So affirming things aloud is a great asset or supreme hindrance, depending on what you are speaking into your life. Most condition the thought system to repeat ill will over themselves in everyday communication. Many often say things like, I think I'm getting sick, or I need to lose weight. When you speak as if you are a human, you limit yourself to finite outcomes rather than allowing the infinite to work on your behalf. Just as you should think and see proactively, you must also speak proactively. It's unnecessary to know how something will come to pass because you are leaving the details in God's hands with proactive speech. A positive and intentional dialogue will allow you to build faith and a new thought system easier. Faith is the expectation that your creations will manifest when God's will align with them. The ability to manifest external outcomes will also depend on work ethic. However, healing the body and mind does not. Faith can be elusive if you have a habit of identifying with things because you will probably credit yourself with making them. Often God will wait to deliver worldly desires just before you run out of time or bring them through some source that is unfamiliar so that you will acknowledge it as a divine blessing. No matter how much praying, affirming, or denying you've done to God for anything, once you receive it, the parasite will do all it can to convince you to praise yourself for it. Faith is a habit and takes subconscious conditioning, just like all other habits. Even if you have a history of good fortune and living in expectation, the enemy will use every situation to make you fear the unknown. Time works to the parasite's advantage because many tend to have trouble remembering what they've overcome in the past when their vibrations or feelings are focused on present circumstances. That's why it's essential to recognize that divinity is your birthright, so that if you can't conceive of a way forward, you will expect a miracle and have the confidence to speak it into existence. When you exist in the higher mental state continually, it is okay to speak something once and be still. However, If you fluctuate between the higher and lower minds and still experience parasitic control of the mind, repetition is the hammer in the tool belt. That is why Prophet Muhammad spoke so highly of repetition and made it a pillar in the Islamic faith. When you say something repeatedly, you are hypnotizing the subconscious and re-engineering your thought system in real time. Repetition will also enhance mental and physical discipline, faith, and principle. However, repeating, "The perfect car will come to me easily," without performing the necessary activities revealed through inspiration, intuition, or imagination, will not make the car miraculously appear. That is not to say financial miracles are not possible if God wills them. But you can't even win a car if you don't fill out the sweepstakes application. So effort is essential. Persistent proactive speech will make faith a habit and condition you to live in expectation. Still, as you grow in that direction, you should pray, affirm, and deny aloud as if the manifestations have already come to pass. You should often pray because it reminds you to give thanks and stay gracious. Some people erroneously believe that God needs or wants gratitude, and that's very untrue because God doesn't need anything from you, absolutely nothing, and that includes tithes or offerings. Having a grateful thought system is to your benefit because it gives you greater control of your mind and feelings in times of peril and confusion. It is a reminder that God has delivered you from trouble in the past so that you will have faith in disturbing moments. If you have a grateful attitude now, it is easier to be thankful for that which has not yet come to pass. When you pray, use proactive speech as well. When you beg God to do something for you or pray with reactive rhetoric, you are presenting yourself as a human without the power to affect your circumstances. When you pray, you must come before God, understanding that universal law is the orchestrator of physical existence and you are the administrator of the law. You are made in the image, cut from the cloth of the living God. That is why in the story, Yeshua said, "I am the Father, the Son, and the Spirit," because in full atonement, there is no difference. And you must pray as if this is already so. When you pray to any external source of power, you are denouncing your divinity. You should never pray to Jesus, but pray like Yeshua, identifying with truth and living in expectation that your thoughts, words, and visions are all that you need as equal descendants of the allegorical Son of God, Adam. An example is, "God, I thank you that I will heal quickly," or, "God, I am thankful that the bills will get paid easily." You should be saying prayers in the affirmative, just like proactive speech. Prayer is necessary to build faith in God's delivery of your desires, but should never be viewed as a replacement for meditation or mental silence because it will never rid you of the parasite. It's also imperative to pray against the manifestation of miscreations. A miscreation is anything that you have thought, said, or spoken that is negative or contrary to your evolution, growth, and development. Pray against miscreations so that you do not realize the effects of reactive thinking during fearful, stressed, or destructive moments. You should pray to build faith, but in dire circumstances, denial is the great saw that will cut off difficulties in your life. When you deny the reality of an experience, issue, or problem, you are speaking it into inexistence. Denial of any circumstance is not about the specific situation, but your recognition that matter is within a matrix that bends to your will. Only that which is eternal can be true. Everything else is a dream. The body will become soil. The soil will become a plant. The plant is eaten and returns to the body. Energy is never lost or destroyed. It just changes form. All matter is identical. All time is relative, and only that which is infinite is true. For that reason, denial of poverty, sickness, depression, anxiety, scarcity, and the parasite must be spoken, affirmed, and visualized repetitively to manifest any desired end. You are not the brain. You are the creator listening to it. Choose what you listen to because that's what you'll create. As stated earlier, meditation is most effective in darkness and silence to cut off the influence of the sensory world to find yourself easier. When seeking the silence, you attempt to isolate the mind from sight, speech, feeling, and sound. Then you can analyze the thought system without distraction while discovering yourself. What you allow yourself to think, see, speak, feel, and hear determines what you manifest. And it is in the silence that you take back control of how you perceive the senses. Furthermore, you must recognize the collective addiction to the worship of money as the antithesis of manifestation. When you glorify anything external, you limit your ability to attract it and further deepen the subconscious identification of the misperceived need for it. The addiction to the worship of money is the cause of much suffering rather than the lack of it, especially in the United States. When you travel to countries much poorer, that don't have the necessities that U.S. citizens take for granted, they often appear more content. They have fewer things but more gratitude. However, most of the time, individuals don't miss what they've never had. A gracious thought system is a way out of suffering and into abundance. Vast rivers of currency will flow to the rich because they expect it to. As long as you put money on a pedestal, it will be more elusive while contributing to your emotional and mental destruction through parasitic manipulation. Should you expect God to deliver the rope you will hang from? Or should you recondition the thought system to prepare for the abundance you deserve? Only individuals that have never experienced large sums of money believe that is the key to happiness. The only thing I am sure that money brings is the craving for more of it and identification with things you can buy. Money is finite and limited. You should not attempt to bind that which is infinite to something intentionally created in scarcity. We must focus on manifesting a prosperous way of living rather than focusing on tangible things. Manifest internal power through silence. Then abundance, peace, love, joy, prosperity, possessions, and money will come. The realization and accessibility of the incredible spiritual power within you is the most crucial endeavor possible and is priceless.